This is Empire Sports Alliance, unfiltered. No fluff, no filters, just the real side of sports. We're talking athletes, coaches, agents, doctors, executives, the people behind the scenes who actually move the needle. From building careers to surviving the grind to winning off the field. This is where real conversations collide.
Welcome to another episode of Empire Sports Alliance Unfiltered. I'm Ronnie. I'm the wealth guy. And since we got the World Cup going on here, we have a soccer football player today, Alexei Rojas. Alexei, great to have you on the show.
Nah, my pleasure, Ronnie. It's good to be here with you, man. Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you. So normally what we do is we kind of get started in terms of like talking about, one's journey, right? In terms of like, obviously you're still a very young fella here. So in terms of how you got started, what you're doing now, what the plans are for the future. So if you don't want to just kind of like give us a little bit of background in terms of who you are and, what are you working on? So
yeah, for sure, man. So I'll take you right back to the beginning. I started playing football when I was 4 years old. And within the space of about 3 months, I decided that I wanted to be a goalkeeper. So I made that decision very quickly. And I love the leadership that comes with the position, the fact that it's a unique position and that is different from the rest. And I have the opportunity to win the game for my team, but at the same time, I could also lose the game for my team. So I like the fact that the margins are very small and that you have to be on it the whole time. So since then, been playing football from the age of 5 till 10, just played for fun, played in my school team, played in my local team, just enjoying it with my friends. And at age 10, we had district trials. So it's the best players from the area where you live in.
And you're born in England, by the way, right?
England. Yeah, this is all in England.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
the best players in the area that you're living in, we decided, right, okay, there's going to be some trials for the team. So that happened every single year. And out of 8 goalkeepers, I got chosen to be the goalkeeper for the team. So that was when I realized I'm actually quite good at this in comparison to other people. I always knew that I was good, but I didn't have it in perspective of how good was I in comparison to other goalkeepers my age. So it was then when I said to myself, right, okay, I've got a talent for this. Let's make sure that I make the most out of it. I want to try and make it as a professional. So I started training a lot more intensely, training with a lot more consistency as well, and also paying more attention to my lifestyle outside of the football pitch in terms of how I was eating, how I was sleeping, any physical gym-based or body weight-based.
And this is at 10, Alexei?
Yeah, this is like 10, 11 years old. Yeah, when I started thinking more
And you
about
always
this.
starting dieting. Okay. Wow. All right.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
I mean, when I was much younger, I used to be a little bit chubby, so I had to make sure that I got myself in good shape. Yeah. So it was from then that I started just taking things a lot more seriously, and I think that really helped set me up for the person that I am now, because it's just as important what you do off the pitch as what you do on the pitch. They all have a part to play and they all influence each other. And then since then, I was obviously training, doing a lot more. And at 13, I got scouted by Arsenal. So I was just playing for my local team. And
how does that work? Can you just elaborate on that process?
Yeah, let's get into that. So the way it works here in England is that you play for a local team that anybody can get into. Obviously, some teams will be a little bit better than others. Some may want to see you for a few sessions and then you go in and play with a team. Some you can just join straight away. And the big clubs, so the clubs that you see in the Premier League, so like all of those teams, Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham, Manchester City, Manchester United, they'll all have scouts that go and watch these games. So they'll all be divided into different parts of the country, different areas, and they're constantly observing, right, what talent can we find? What players can we find here that would maybe be able to go into our academy, our youth setup, and then be able to get signed there? So usually the way they do is they'll go around, they'll spot a player, right? Okay, that player's made an impression, and then they'll watch him for a few games, because it's not just about how you perform in one game. They want to see how you perform a few games, one after the other, to see how consistent you really are. And then once they do want to invite you in on trial, usually they'll speak with your coach, with your parents or your guardians. And then from there, you go in on trial with the team. And the way it works when you're on trial, you're pretty much part of the team for a number of weeks. So you train every day with them. So in my case, I was then training with the under 13 team at Arsenal. You train every single day with the team. You play the matches on the weekend and you start integrating yourself as part of the group. And usually that process lasts 8 weeks. It's an 8-week trial. And sometimes there will be some players that, unfortunately, if after 2 weeks they're terrible, they'll tell them, nah, we don't want you. But then at the same time, if you're really good, you can get told early. So in my case, I got told after 5 weeks, yeah, we want to sign you. So we want you to be part of the team. So for me, that was huge. That was a massive moment because that's what I've been working towards, because that's the first step really for many young players to get into the professional games, to get into the youth setup of one of these big clubs and then work your way through. So it's a
Yeah.
massive step when that does happen. So that happened when I was 13. And then since then, I've progressed my way through the academy.
So, and again, I think it's important to understand, right? That's still the case because I have some background in Europe as well. But you're basically when you started playing, football, soccer, right? You basically that's all on you. That's not integrated in any school system. That's a club that you say, hey, I'm joining those guys, right? Because I think that's a bit different here now. Again, you're talking about the age of like what 13 now, and like here in terms of like high school, college football, that's attached to a school. That's not the case for you, right? So in terms of academics and everything, that's separate, that's different, that's on your own time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That is completely under your own terms. It's
Yeah.
like, look, I want to do this. I'm doing this outside of my school time.
Yeah.
And I still have to prioritize school just as much because a lot of the clubs, they're constantly in communication with your school to make sure that you're
Yeah.
studying more. And if you're not getting good grades, then they're going to be on to you.
Okay. So again, now that was, you basically 5 weeks into it, you were at U13. Excuse me, you're on around 13,
Yeah.
then what happens next? How old are you
So
now?
after that, obviously you get called into a meeting. They're like, look,
Yeah.
oh, we want to speak with you and your parents. And they say, right, okay, we want to sign you. Look, this is the process. We just need to fill in a few paperwork, get you all registered. And then from then you'll be part of the academy. And the way it works when you are part of the academy is obviously that's what you do. So a typical week would look something like this, where you train 3 or 4 times a week in the evenings. So for example, a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, maybe Friday, and then play on Saturdays. And one of those days throughout the week, you would leave school slightly early. So the way we had it was on a Tuesday, you would always train twice. So you train in the early afternoon, say at about 2, 3 o'clock, and then train again in the evening at about 5. So that day you would go half a day at school, leave school early, and then go train. And then the other days would just be after school and you're done, start training at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And the way it works from starting from 12 is that it works in 2-year blocks. So up until 12, at the end of each season, they tell you, right, do you get another year here or do we not want you anymore? That's the way it works. But from
But if they don't
12,
want you anymore, what's your next step?
yeah, I
What
mean,
future do
if
you have?
they don't want you anymore, it literally is down to you at the end of the day. Some clubs will be better than others in supporting the players. Like some will help them find a new team.
Yeah.
Some won't care at all. But usually at a young age, most of the time players will then be able to go and find a different club, a majority of the time. You'll have some players that stop playing altogether, but that rarely happens at such a young age completely, because oftentimes when a club says they don't want you, it's not necessarily that you're a bad player. It's just the fact that they don't necessarily need you because they've got other players that may be very, very good in your position. But if you go to another club, you would be fantastic.
Well, you're talking
Especially.
about one of the best, clubs in the world in terms of Arsenal, right? So I mean, in terms of like, there's probably an abundance of high-end talent, right? And especially maybe can you elaborate on that because you're a goalie, right? I mean, you're not on the field. I mean, you're on the field, but in terms of like that's a very, very special position. So and obviously there's fewer opportunities to play goalie than if you have like 4 defensemen that are playing. So how's that work in terms of how do you get training in and obviously within one match, normally they're just using one goalie. So how do you get training? How do you get filmed together?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the parts that's difficult about the position is that there's only ever one goalkeeper that's going to play. So it just shows the expectation in that position and the importance of you striving to be the best every single day. That you have to be the best in training, the hardest worker, and also the best performer so that you can earn that opportunity. And when you do get that opportunity to play, you have to maximize it. You have to be there to say, look, I'm performing, I've performed, I'm not losing my shot. I'm staying in this position and I'm doing absolutely everything I can to be the best player on the pitch every single time that I go so that the position doesn't get given to anybody else. But then that also makes it difficult if you're not the number one goalkeeper to get an opportunity, because oftentimes the only way that opportunity will come is if the other player is doing really bad, making loads of mistakes in goal, or they get injured, or they get a suspension. So that's one thing about a goalkeeper, that oftentimes your opportunity is outside of your control. Whereas in other positions, if you're training really well, if you're doing really well, you can still get 10, 15 minutes at the end of the match. You can come on as a substitute. And then if you do well, then you could work your way into the team. Whereas as a goalkeeper, it's rare that you'll ever get substituted. So it's a very different type of dynamic that you have to work with.
Yeah. So from a certain perspective, not that you're hoping, but it doesn't necessarily, work against you if somebody else messes up, right? And as you said, this is not just on the pitch, right? During game day, it's during practice, it's during, like schooling and all that stuff. So if another goalie messes up, it might be, your fortune, so to speak.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
exactly, man. But that's the reality of
that's just the
sport at
way
the
it
end of
is.
the
Yeah.
day. Yeah, it's the reality. It's a selfish world, and it's everybody fighting for themselves, especially at a young age.
Yeah. We have, a bunch of people on in different sports, especially, football, baseball, and all that stuff. And a lot of them, they grow up playing different sports, then they figure out, hey, they're going to play American football. But the fact of the matter is, you have several different positions, and then you have both sides of the ball, right? Offense and defense, where for you guys, people are on the pitch, they defend,
Yeah.
they play offense. And for you, it's even more difficult. So, you're talking about a level of dedication here at a very young age. Yeah. Maybe in terms of can you talk a little bit to the coaching within the academy, and obviously again with a club like Arsenal, in terms of what's their background? I imagine those are high-end coaches, right?
Yeah, you get a bit of everything, to be fair,
Mm.
which is good to get different perspectives in the sense that, first and foremost, you get some coaches which are from England, some which are from different countries, which is
Yep.
great. You also get some that have played football, some that, obviously everyone's played, but some that
Yeah.
have played at a professional level,
Yeah.
some that have played at maybe a semi-professional level, and then some that never made it to the professional level. So you get a mixture of different experiences from different people. And also you'll get some which are much younger, which may have started coaching straight away, from 18, 19, they said, right, I'm going to be a coach, and I'm going into coaching. And then you also get some that are older, which may have had a career in professional football, say up until 35, 40 years old. And then after that, they'll get into coaching.
Yeah.
So it's good to get those different perspectives, because from everybody you can learn something. And that's the best thing about being able to work with many different coaches. Everybody has something to teach you, and everybody has a unique experience that they can share with you. And an important thing about the way we coach is that it's quite a holistic thing. It's about understanding that they teach us, right, how do you play your best in your own position? But then also, how does your position then influence your role within the team? How do we then get the best out of the team, both technically, tactically? And it's also then, what can you do off the pitch? So in the gym, how can you be stronger? How can you be faster? How can you jump higher? How can you be more athletic, so that when you are on the pitch, you're able to express your technical quality to a higher level?
I
And
want
then
Go ahead. Sorry, Alexei.
yeah, and then final point is that we also review a lot of video footage, both individually and as a team. So after games or after training sessions, we'll have
Yeah.
meetings where we sit down and we'll look through different clips from a game or from a training session and see, right, okay, this is what we've done well, this is what we can do better, this is how we can change it, both as a group and also individually as well.
A couple of things in terms of the coaching, especially international. I would imagine that's a huge benefit, right? Having people from different places in terms of the styles of, football being played worldwide. If you look at again, Western Europe versus South America versus Africa, you see this within the World Cup. They can be vastly different. I would imagine from a coaching perspective, that's an asset, right? Having these different players, having played different styles, and you kind of come into your own in terms of the way you want to play.
Yeah, exactly. Because everyone comes with, like you said, Ronnie, a different style, a different way of playing football, and you can take the best from everything, and then you can combine it to be the best of all worlds.
Yeah. And then I just think, again, such a unique position in terms of mental toughness, but you're talking about strength training. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Can I share a little bit in terms of how does a goalie work out? What's your routine in the weight room?
Yeah, so I think it's, first of all, starting from a young age, it's about building the foundations. First of all, do you have good range of movement? Are you mobile? Are you flexible? That's the foundations of it. Then, do you have a bit of an athletic base? Can you do your own body weight? Can you do body weight exercises without adding in loads of weight? And then I'll say before we even start adding in weights, we do a lot of plyometric training. So a lot
Yeah.
of jumping, a lot of hopping, a lot of bounding. And then as you work up the ages, say maybe from 14, 15 is when we start implementing more strength training, because up until then is more so about movement quality so that you have the foundations. And then from there is right, now let's start developing those movement qualities into you actually being stronger in those movements. And a lot of it's very functional stuff. A lot of squats, single leg work, single leg stability work as well.
Huh?
You know, targeting all of the main muscle groups in the legs, and also a lot of core stability work, and also upper body strength. So I personally like doing a lot of functional movements where I base like my upper body will be mostly just pull-ups, dips, push-ups.
Yeah.
And then I'll just add weight onto those things. And then from a lower body perspective is once I've built up that strength, you're just maintaining it. So doing a little bit, maybe every 3-4 days, 2 sets, 5 reps, and doing a lot of single leg work more than anything, because most of my work on the pitch is single leg. When I'm diving, I'm pushing off one leg more than the other. When I'm taking cross, it's one leg. You know, when I'm striking a ball, one leg is the one supporting it and the other one striking it. So it's important to be able to work unilaterally and make sure that your legs have symmetry between the two sides.
Yeah, I mean, this is not about for you as a goalie to go get in the gym and get big, right? In terms of like,
No.
doing a bunch of like, chest exercise and all that stuff. Again, as you said, so it's very, very specific to your position in terms of like single leg and, okay.
Yeah, so ultimately, it's like everything you do off the pitch, there's no point doing it if it's not going to then help you with your performance on the pitch. So it's like there's no point going into the gym and just lifting weights to get stronger just for the sake of getting stronger. It's like,
Yes.
right, if I'm doing this exercise, what's the actual benefit going to be for me in terms of my
Your
performance?
particular position. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
And how do you practice out of the weight room? How do you practice as a goalie? What does a session look like? How many hours you guys train a day? Is like 3-4
Yeah, I mean,
hours
and
on
it
the pitch. I
depends.
mean,
On the pitch, usually it's about 2 hours total, 2 to 2.5 hours. And the way it works is that the goalkeepers will pretty much always head out earlier than the team, at least maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes before the rest of the squad, so we can get a bit of extra work in. And it's a combination of things. So first of all, we work on our just general techniques. You know, you've got general techniques of catching the ball, of doing a low pickup, of your dives, of your crosses, of your passing. So it's about having a good technical foundation. And then it's about transferring those things into game-like situations, working on a lot of crosses that come into the box where you have to come up and take them, working on a lot of moving balls, first-time strikes where you're having to save the ball, a lot of cutbacks where you're having to try and stop the ball from coming across the box and prevent situations like that. And the more you practice those things, the better you'll be in game situations, because you're seeing the same pictures that you're seeing in a game, but you're seeing them in training as well. And then finally, when you then go in with a team, it's about being able to transfer those things. So when you've got the ball at your feet, being able to find the right pass, being able to find the spare man. And then when you're actually in game situation with the team, is how do you organize the defense in front of you, talking to them, being in a position where if anything comes over the back of the defensive line, you can be there to either catch it or kick it out or receive it and then play a pass. And ultimately, how good are you at keeping the ball out of the net, which is the most important thing as a goalkeeper.
Yeah. But I mean, you mentioned it in the beginning, leadership, right? You're talking to your back line there, right? You're basically coordinating, because obviously you have a unique position in terms of where you see, the play develop, etc. So yeah, you must be in constant, communication with your back line, right? How does that work?
Exactly that. Like you said, Ronnie, you're the player that can see everything. You know, you're the only player that can see everything on the pitch at all times. So the view that you have is really advantageous. You have to make sure that you make the most out of it, and you can set your team up in a way where the opposition will get less chances. There's a great saying that says the best goalkeepers never have anything to do because they've always organized their team in the best way. So that's really important. And sometimes one little bit of communication, as short as 3 or 4 words, can be the difference between a goal or not a goal, because you get somebody in the right position and then they end up clearing the ball away or intercepting a ball which otherwise would have gotten to the opposition striker, and then that could have been a goal.
So, and again, you obviously see certain styles in terms of the offense that throws at you, once again, coming from that unique position, right? So let's just say it's halftime and all that stuff. They have ran, different attacks, and you obviously get an understanding, a sense. And that leads me to the other question in terms of like the film studying against the clubs that you're playing. I would imagine that, during the break, right, the halftime, there's a lot of communication going on from your end, right? In terms of, hey, look, guys, this is
Yeah.
what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
When they're coming over the left side, is that the way it works?
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from the whole team. But obviously,
Sure.
every single one of us can give a different perspective on, right? Okay, I'm feeling the game like this, or I'm seeing it like that. And oftentimes, as a goalkeeper, you can see it from a more of a zoomed out perspective, because the rest of the players on the field, they're pretty much involved in the action the whole time. So they don't have
Yes.
a moment to
Yes.
sort of zoom out and see it from a different perspective. Whereas as a goalkeeper, you spend the majority of the game being out of the game. You're not actually directly involved in it all the time. So you can see things with a cooler head and with a bigger picture view.
That's also, and again, from a film study perspective, is everybody on the team looking at different things, or are you guys looking at the same stuff?
So there'll
From
be some, yeah, there'll be some things which we look at collectively, like just generally what patterns could the opposition have in terms of how they defend, how they attack, so we're all aware. And then also we'll look at more individual things. Is that right? The player that I'm coming up against, what does he tend to play like? What are his tendencies? Where does he like to attack? Is he right-footed? Is he left-footed? What are the possible combinations that he might try? And then that way we have an idea of what they could do. And then that way we can be better prepared to deal with those things, and also see how can we exploit the opposition as well.
Okay. So again, now you're at the academy. What's the next step potentially from a club level? Is it, getting called up by Arsenal, playing for them?
Yeah, so look, once you're in the academy, it's a case of working your way up. So look, from 13, you've got 2 years, 13, under 13s, under 14s.
Yeah.
Then at the end of under 14, they'll tell you, do we want you, do we not want you? And then the first big real decision is when you get to 16, because at 16, they can give you something what's called a scholarship. And the way that works is that once you get to 16, is that if you do get given this scholarship, then you finish school, you stop going to school, and you start playing football full time. You still do your education alongside it, but now football is the main focus. Like education is more of a secondary thing at that point, rather than education being like what you do every single day. Going to school is every single day is football. So, and then that's from the point that you start getting paid as well. Start getting paid very little, but it's a big step to start getting paid for playing the sport. It's huge.
Yeah.
Especially when you're 16 years old. That's massive. So right at 16, I got that scholarship, and as a lot of other players do as well. And then from there is like, right, okay, every day I go in, I train in the mornings, in the afternoons, a couple of times a week, I study. And then after you've got that scholarship runs from 16 until 18, 2 years. The next step is to try and get a professional contract. So that's when once you get a professional contract, you're a professional player at that point. And you can sign a professional contract from any time from when you're 17 years old.
17, so that's the cutoff? That's where it starts?
That's when it starts. That's the youngest you can be to sign it. Yeah. And for me, in my case, I signed mine when I was 18 years old. And that's a huge moment, because at the end of the day, that's what everyone's working towards. That's your dream, is to become a professional footballer, and to be able to say, right, I'm doing every single day, I'm doing what I love, and I'm getting paid for it, is massive.
Yeah, I mean, that was an accomplishment. Again, in terms of like, you look at the league that you're in and the team that you're playing for. So is this like a two-way contract then, where they could basically say, let's just say the main club, Arsenal, runs into trouble, injuries at the goalie position. Could you basically get a call? Is it like here with not, in a bad way, but from a minor league system where all of a sudden you get the call up and now you're going to be the starter in the net for the main club?
Yeah, things can work like that. Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, when you're at the club, anything can happen. You could be, so when you're in your scholarship, you're playing with the under 18 team. So obviously, up until under 16, there's an age group for every year. So it's under 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Then from when you start your scholarship there's an under 18 team, then an under 21s team, and then after the under 21s team is the main team, the senior team, which we call the first team. And anything can happen, you could be, if you start playing well in the under 18s and there's an opportunity in the under 21s, you could go play in the under 21s. And the same way how, right, if the first team need a player and you're doing well, or they see that you have potential, is that you will then go maybe start training with the first team. And then if an opportunity opens up, is then maybe you're playing for the first team. And you see that a lot of times, you get boys that are 18, 19 years old and they play a few games with the first team. So it's all dependent on your performance and what
Sure.
opportunities open up. Sometimes injuries can be massive because they leave an opportunity for you to play there.
But even if not within that particular club, that and obviously, again, being at that level gives you an opportunity to showcase yourself as well. Could it be that you can easily and there's another opportunity in terms of transfer within the Premier League system or even elsewhere in Europe? Is that, a
Yeah.
possibility?
Yeah, definitely, man. So
Yeah.
obviously, if you're still under contract,
Sure.
another club might be interested. They could pay. Look, they could organize something with the club where they say,
Yeah.
"All right, look, we want to pay. You want this player? This is his cost. Are you willing to pay? Yes or no? All right, cool. That happens.
Sure.
Transfer happens. We go to another team. And then what can also happen is that if a player's contract runs out, either because the club chooses not to offer him a new contract or the player chooses not to renew their new contract or sign a new contract, then many times they can then go for free to another club.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely happens, man. And that happens a lot because it's very rare that the club that you came up through their
Yeah.
academy in
Yeah.
will be the club that you stay at forever or the club that you really establish yourself at, especially at a team like Arsenal, because Arsenal's such a massive club, is
Yes.
that majority of the time you need to go to another team first
Yes.
at a lower level,
Yes.
start gaining the experience, and then from there you can slowly work your way back up.
Yeah. Again, you might, it might be within England, but maybe you start with I don't know, maybe you go to Bundesliga, play for Wolfsburg because they saw how great you did, and then you work your way up, right, to that. But it certainly
Exactly
does
that.
seem like that's an opportunity again that opens up. The longer you are within that system, it's kind of what you are, right? The more tape you have, the more like clubs will see you and say, "Hey, you know what? That's a young goalie. We want this guy. Let's call up, Arsenal and see what they would do for
Yeah, exactly that.
him."
Exactly that. That's exactly the way it works.
And then again, to that point, obviously I'm on the business side of things. That is really at the end of the day a business, right? All you can control is really what the effort that you just described for the last 20 minutes. And that's really it, right? I mean, the rest of it, that's a big business you guys are in. So
Yeah, I mean, football's a business at the end of the day, and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
players are assets, and you have to understand that the moment that you're not performing, you could get switched out like that. So
Yeah.
it's
And
also
there's two other
shows
guys
that
behind you that want
yeah,
your position, right?
exactly. It
So
just shows that you need to be on it all the time, and you need
right.
to understand, right? Look, like you said, Ronnie, I just need to make sure that everything that I can control, I'm doing to the best of my ability, and then I let the outcome take care of itself.
No, it's just, every time, you have these conversations with athletes, the level of dedication that it takes from such a young age on is very impressive. But just switching gears a little bit now in terms of we talked about club soccer or football. From an international perspective, you could basically play for three different international teams, right? You're born in England, Colombia, and then Russia would be an option as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So my father's Colombian, my mother's Russian, and then
Yeah.
I'm
And you
born
were
here
born
in
in England.
England.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you decided to go and play for Colombia, correct?
Yes.
Can you walk us through that a little bit, the decision-making process? Because I think once you decided you play an international, have an international appearance for one team, you can't go back, correct?
No, so the way it works is that as long as you haven't made more than 3 international appearances
3. Okay.
for one team before the age of 21, then you can change once. That's the way it works. But for me, it was quite an easy decision to want to play for Colombia. I've always felt more Colombian than anything. The,
Yeah.
the way that we live at home, the culture that we have,
And
the
I mean,
customs,
you're obviously
yeah,
fluent in
everything.
Spanish, I would assume?
Yeah. And
That
obviously,
helps. That's
I
good.
I'd spent a lot of time there as well when I was younger. And footballistically, Colombia is a massive country, and it's a huge honor and a huge opportunity to represent my national team. So it was a decision that I didn't need to think twice about.
Yeah, no, so can you walk us through that a little bit in terms of the Colombian, bless you,
Yes.
national team and, kind of the playing style, et cetera. I think, every time you guys play in the US, I mean, you weren't around, but back in '94, I think they came in as a favorite. I believe back then Pele even picked them to win the whole thing. Didn't quite work out that way, but it seems like you guys are on a good roll here, with the World Cup going on here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, Colombia, the thing that really identifies us as people, and you can see it in the national team, is the real passion that we have for our country and that sense of real responsibility that we have.
Yeah.
when we put on the national team shirt to go and represent our country, because we understand we're not just representing our teammates and our staff, but we're representing over 50 million Colombians that are living in Colombia, that are living outside of Colombia as well. And it's a dream for every single one of us, you know, whenever we grow up playing football, to say that I want to go and represent the national team and I want to go and play at a World Cup. So it's that real sentiment and that real meaning behind it all.
Yeah, that's terrific. How would you describe the playing style if you compare it? Again, we talked about it a little bit early in terms of like South American, clubs normally, or clubs, national teams play a little different style than, some of the Europeans, it seems to me, which it
Yeah.
seems to be very apparent during this World Cup, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's quite a direct style in the sense that
Attack.
oftentimes you'll see teams in Europe be a lot more possession based, a lot more patient in the build up,
Mhm.
whereas with Colombia, it's a lot more like, right, okay, maybe we've done 2, 3 passes, and now we're going to try and attack straight away. You know, if we need to be in direct and play down the channels, we will. If we need to go straight into the front, we will. If we can play through the thirds, we will. And it tends to be quite a dynamic game where games are often quite end to end, and you see a lot of flair, a lot of individualism from players who are able to do something unexpected, show a little bit of skill, and that really makes a difference.
Do you think the individuality in terms of, from a, player's perspective, kind of like you have an opportunity to shine a little bit more there than and again in a system that's a little bit more structured?
I think definitely when you play with Colombia, there's definitely a sense where, look, it makes up the identity of the country as a footballing
Yeah.
nation. You've got players that have that little bit of flair, players that have that bit of personality that they can show or they can do on the board. So it's definitely something that players like to make the most of, and it really characterizes our football. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think in terms of like the style of play? Sometimes, again, I'm going back to this World Cup, and I would, love to hear your assessment so far, what you've seen if you followed it. But in terms of some of these systems, I feel like especially a lot of the, European, teams, they're so structured to a certain extent, especially at the group stage, where it seems almost that they forgot what this was about in terms of go and score goals. I mean, maybe that's just my impression. I'm just, seeing what do you see, in terms of like the systems and the strategy and the tactics and all that stuff these days?
Yeah, I
Almost
mean,
overdone.
yeah, football has definitely become a lot more structured, a lot
Yeah.
more systemized, as you say, Ronnie. And there's definitely a lot more tactical elements into it. I think if you look back at football 10, 15, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
it definitely wasn't as structured. You know, it was a lot more free flowing and there wasn't as much rigidity in what you've done. And I think there's benefits with both that comes, and ultimately you need to do what gets the best out of your team, out of your players. And I think for some teams, to be more structured is obviously going to be better for them, better for the way that they play. And for some teams to be more free flowing is going to be better for them. So ultimately, it's getting the best out of what you can and doing what helps you win the game, because everyone's different.
Yeah, it just again, it seems, especially if I look at Colombia or Argentina and all those guys, again, they're playing a lot more direct, which again, I think to what you were saying reflects the style of maybe just living where they're from in terms of like you can see that in terms of the way they play football, right? Versus again, if you look at the German national team, they're structured, they're disciplined in terms of the way they play. But no, so. What's your assessment so far, World Cup wise? What do you see, that maybe the regular normal soccer or football fan doesn't see? Anything that sticks out?
No, I think what sticks out is the fact that you don't necessarily need to have massive stars in your team to do well. That it's about how well you can do as a team, how well you
Collective.
can collaborate together and all be on the same wavelength as to, right, what do we need to do to get the best out of our teammates, to get out of the best out of myself, and ultimately, how can we win the game? And football's always all about moments, and you see it in the World Cup where you could be playing terribly the whole game, but in that one key moment you show up, you score the goal, or you make the block, you make the save, and that wins you the game. That's all that matters at the end of the day in these big tournaments. So the margins are very, very small.
Yeah, yeah. Any particular favorites that you see? Obviously, Colombia, I understand that. Other than that squad, any other folks that you see, hey, they're really sticking out? Is it Argentina?
I
Is
mean,
it France?
I think it's been great to see some of the smaller nations doing well, especially some of their goalkeepers. Like the goalkeeper for Curacao was doing really, really well.
Yeah.
Like Eli Remy was fantastic, and also what was the team? The goalkeeper. They played against Spain the first game. I forget the name of the team. It
Oh,
was
Copa Verde, I believe.
Cape Verde.
Yeah, yeah.
Exacto. Yeah, Cape Verde. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's fantastic to see. smaller nations being able to really show a fight against these massive teams. So it just goes to show that sometimes some players just need an opportunity to shine.
Yeah, it just seems with that particular matchup, obviously you have such a massive, like, with Spain, but it just seems to me, again, going back to the system, the structure, etc. Some of these nations, they come up there and they play freely, right? Versus having almost too much structure, because again, what do they have to lose? They can play free the way they want to play, right? There's not a whole lot to lose, even if they, get scored on 4 times. But maybe from a goalkeeper perspective, let's go back. Who were the people that you looked up to in terms of like, hey, I want to play like this guy, right? Here in the U.S., I know on Fox there's a lot of like Peter Schmeichel is on there, which I don't know if you remember him. Obviously, he played for Manchester United for a long time, but any particular like heroes of you in that on that particular, in that position?
Yeah, massively. For me, I always looked up to Petr Cech. He was huge, like a great
He played for
goalkeeper, great
Chelsea, didn't he?
passing. Yeah, he played for Chelsea and
Yeah.
played for Arsenal as well.
Oh, okay.
He had a great personality as a goalkeeper, great guy, and he was always really commanding and really dominant on the pitch, which is something that is really important for a goalkeeper. I always looked up to him a lot.
Yeah. Any others?
I'll say he's the main one, but obviously I like to look at a lot of different goalkeepers and
Yes.
take the best from them now, seeing how well David Raya has done over the last few years, being able to work closely with him as well has been huge. It's a great opportunity to be able to work with him day to day, be able to ask him questions, see what he does to be at that level, and ultimately use that as an inspiration for me to try and get there as well.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Yeah, as we kind of come to the end of the discussion, it's just, couple more things in regards to from a business aspect of things. Let's just specifically social media. Right? Do you feel like is that more of a distraction for younger players these days, or can I help you more with your brand, not just from a sponsorship perspective, but kind of like, again, create basically different tape or additional tape in terms of who you are as a personality, what you bring to the club, etc. Do you think it's more of upside or more downside from that perspective?
I think it's about how you use it.
Hmm.
If it can be a distraction, but then at the same time, it can be a huge tool, not just for yourself, but also to educate yourself. Like the amount of things that I've learned from seeing different creators on TikTok, on
Yeah.
Instagram, on YouTube, where is real good information either around the mind, around the game of football, around how I can be better physically, how to eat better, how to sleep better. So there's so much educational content on there, but it's obviously about consuming the right type of content. And then ultimately how you use it yourself can be massive because, like you say, it can be great to have a public image, a positive public image. You can use it to spread positive messages. You can use it to influence people positively. And also you can use it to show who you are as a person, show who you are as an athlete, which, like you said, can help with commercial visibility, can help with even team visibility because they'll see, okay, cool, this guy player is not only a good player, but he's also a good person. And this is a good way for us to see, right? Here's his video footage. Here we can see it. So
Yeah.
I think it can be used as a tool massively. And nowadays it's really important to actually know how to use it as a tool, but make sure that you don't let yourself get distracted by it, but making sure that, you're not following people that you shouldn't be following, people that
Oh, just the following
so
itself can, throw up a red
I think
flag?
I think I think that's massive because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, look, two things is the following will obviously reflect on who you are as a person, because people see who you can follow. But more than anything, excuse me, more than anything
Bless you.
is the type of content that you see. Because if you're following people that are posting content that's just not useful to you, that's just a
Yes.
distraction, and you're constantly seeing it. But if you're following creators that are creating useful content that's beneficial for you, that's
Yeah.
what you're seeing on your page. So it's about being wary of that.
Yeah. No, I think there's, again, it can be risk as well, right? And it's just, sometimes, people get carried away, posting things in moments they probably shouldn't. So has any business developed out of that in terms of from a sponsorship? Obviously, NIL here in the United States has been, a really, a big discussion with that name, image, likeness stuff, right? From, again, getting paid in terms of from advertisement perspective, sponsorship, anything that developed out of that for you?
Yeah, definitely. I've had a lot of opportunities come from there. Like you say,
Okay.
from the commercial side of things and also from a public speaking side of things. I do a lot of public speaking, so I've had
Oh, you
opportunities
do?
come.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Okay. What topics do you cover? I would imagine it's about your young career and,
Yeah, I mean, some of it is speaking about my career, but a lot of it's also about sustainability within football.
that's a very good point. So in terms of, so what's your next goal then in terms of like you as a player, obviously?
As a player, well, ultimately now for me is to go to a new club, establish myself there, start playing regularly there as a number one. And
Yep.
then from there, just keep improving my performances and get closer and closer to the senior national team with Colombia.
Okay. So that's a big goal. Okay. From a professional perspective. Do you ever see, if you think about it, I mean, it's way, ahead of, probably things, but in terms of where do you see, life beyond football, or is football, do you think it's always going to be part of your life one way or the other? If you become, if you turn into a
Yeah.
coach, if you, I don't know, do broadcasting, whatnot, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think football will always be part of my life. And ideally, I want to work hard, perform well, and have a career where I can set myself up from a financial perspective where if I do choose to work after my professional career, it's not out of necessity, but it's out of pure passion for what it is that I'm doing, and be able to use all of the skills that I've learned to then maybe teach others and be involved in football in one way or another, definitely for sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, no, Alexia, it's been fun. I mean, this is, again, I've never had a, football player, soccer player, as we say here, on the podcast. So this, I just think it's a different sport. It's a very unique position that you're playing specifically. The only thing that I could think of that we had on is maybe goalie in hockey. But again, I think, yeah, no, that's awesome. Wish you continued success, and definitely thank you very much for coming on, man.
No, my pleasure, Ronnie. It's been a really good discussion, and I hope that people can take a few things from it and see a different perspective, from a football player, and also learn different things. So I'm glad that we've been able to talk over what we have.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you very much.